detective with the sheriff's office. I'm going to go over some of the facts from the officer-involved shooting from last night. Last night around 7:50 p.m., officers were dispatched to a call received by 911 in the 2100 block of North Pearl Street. The call was a domestic battery call that involved a male injuring his 17-year-old son. The officers dispatched were Officer Scott Williams, who is a 5.5-year veteran, and Officer Kevin Kilcoyne, who is almost a 3-year veteran. They arrived on the scene and began to investigate the call. A decision was made to arrest the subject who was the subject of the call. He is identified as 38-year-old Anthony Dwayne Harris. He has a last known address of the 2100 block of North Pearl Street as well. The officers began to handcuff the subject, who repeatedly told them that he was not going to go back to jail. When the officers began to place the handcuffs on Harris, he grabbed Officer Kilcoyne in kind of a bear hug, threw him to the ground, and the two officers and the subject fell to the ground and began to wrestle, and the officers worked to handcuff the subject. As the three were tied up on the ground, Officer Williams saw subject Harris reach around and grab Officer Kilcoyne's gun, place his hand on his gun, unsnap the gun, and began to remove the firearm from the holster. At that point, Officer Williams disengaged from the other two, stood up, pulled his issued firearm, and fired 7 times at the subject. The subject was hit all 7 times. Fire rescue was called, responded, and announced the subject dead at the scene. Witnesses who were in the area also told the cold case detectives that the subject did make threats that he was not going to go back to jail, and that they also saw the subject attack the officers as well. The Officer Kilcoyne, during the incident, Officer Kilcoyne received an injury to his left thigh. Truly, the nature of that injury cannot be determined at this time. It's unknown if indeed he was received part of a gunshot wound, or if this was another injury that had occurred from like a ricochet from one of the shots, or some of the other articles that were out on the ground in front of this house. As per policy, the officers were placed on administrative leave during the course of the investigation. Now, Harris had an extensive criminal history. It dated back to when he was 15 and had an arrest for murder. As an adult, he also had another arrest for murder, armed robbery, kidnapping, burglary, sale and possession of cocaine, drugs, gambling, and traffic charges. This outlines what these officers do out here on a daily basis. Going to these calls, every call that these officers go to involves a gun. They carry it with them. At that scene, whether the subject had a gun or not, a gun is introduced when the officers come. The subject's intent to not go back to jail was clear and evident, and he was serious about the threats that he made. It's by the training and professionalism that these officers have that they're able to make it through these calls that they go to. Last night is no exception. I can answer any questions.
Any opportunity to tase him?
At that point in time, as he started to remove the officer's gun, I wouldn't take a taser to a gunfight, and that officer didn't either.
The incident report mentions 2 children, or 2 teens initially in the aggravated battery call. Were both suspected to be abused, or just the one 17-year-old?
They had at least probable cause to arrest him on the one 17-year-old who had been injured during the initial call. So,
how old was his children?
What's that? These were his children, yes.
How old was the second child, and what was the initial, you say, battery? What were they arguing about? And
the information that the officers had gone to the call on was that the 17-year-old was injured during the struggle between he and his father. And I believe the other child was there. I'll have to get the other information to you, but it was initially the injury to the 17-year-old, I believe, that prompted the 911 call.
and
It was
age
a
of the
fist
other
fight or something?
The father went over there and just dealing with the son, I believe a pushing match kind of ensued. The child was pushed into a china cabinet. The glass of the china cabinet broke, cut the 17-year-old on the shoulder.
Who called police?
The child's mother.
Any other questions?
How old is the second child?
I don't know how to get that for you.
Are you able to confirm, I know that we don't know the exact nature of the injury to the thigh, was it definitively related to guns in some way, or could it have even been just debris on the ground?
I can't say that it was completely related to guns. There was some other debris that was out there. It was right on the sidewalk. There was a step that had kind of a sharp corner to it. Again, the hospital couldn't tell us exactly the nature of it, and I certainly wouldn't try to second guess what it is. It was an injury to his left thigh. Again, it could have been a ricochet with the 7 rounds right there on the sidewalk area. It's just hard to say.
And for clarification, Tom, did Harris live there at that address? Or
He had
just
used
visit?
that address, and I believe his mother used that address as well. So somewhere in the past, that address actually had been used several times at arrest dockets he had.
When was he most recently released from jail?
January 17th.
But you don't know what the nature of the argument was, what it was over, what the topic of the argument between the
I'm not
fathers.
sure. At that point in time, it wasn't relative to what the officers had done.
Any other questions? All right,